Welcome to the Laws of Business podcast. Here, we will share the skills you need to make your business a success. Learn about goal setting, productivity, time management, marketing, and much more. Hear inspiring stories with today's best business leaders and join a hub of thousands of passionate entrepreneurs across the world. And now, here's your host, Jamil Jama.
Hello there, everybody, and welcome to the Law of Business podcast, where I interview successful entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Jamil Jama, and today I'm interviewing Tema Frank, customer experience, usability, and marketing expert, author of People Shock, The Path to Profit When Customers Rule. It's a real pleasure to welcome Tema Frank. Tema, first of all, I want to thank you so much for taking your time out to being here.
It's my pleasure to be here, Jamil.
So, Tema, before we start your interview, please tell us your backstory, your story basically, from where you were to where you are now, please.
Yeah, my story is kind of a convoluted one. So I've been all over the place. I started in business government relations for the banking industry. So basically I'd worked for the Canadian government for a while and then was essentially a lobbyist for a while. But when you're working in business government relations, obviously understanding your customers, or the people you're trying to influence, is hugely important. And also, of course, they're influenced by the public. So that is another form of customer for what you're doing. So then I did an MBA, went into bank marketing and got real hands-on practical experience on the customer side. And also that's really what got me thinking a bit about the back-end sides of customer experience as well, the process side, because we had fantastic frontline staff, but the head office was a big bureaucracy and kept making mistakes. And so the result was, unfortunately, that our fabulous frontline staff had to keep saying sorry, and eventually customers get annoyed no matter how nice your tellers are. So that was in some ways the early part of this journey. Then I took a bit of a detour for a while. I wrote a book about Canada's best employers for women, which got me very focused on the employee side, which ultimately tied back into People Shock, because you're not going to have great customer service if you don't have happy people, happy staff. And what I found there was the best for women were great for men too, because they basically took all their employees seriously and treated them well. But unfortunately, the best for men aren't always the best for women. So it doesn't always go both ways.
And I'm going to start with this quote for your next question. Our customer base grows by the happy customers that go out of our doors. Most businesses want happy customers, but overall customer experience ratings are dropping. Why would that be, Tema?
Well, I think there are a couple of factors at work. The big one really is what I call in the book the Amazon effect, which is we have all become so accustomed to an incredibly high bar that's been set by Amazon. You know, and speaking as someone now who sells through Amazon, it's not so great if you're selling through them, but if you're their ultimate purchaser, the customers, they treat you like gold, and they offer huge selection, great prices, fast delivery. And so now people are expecting that level of service in every aspect of their dealings, whether it's in retail or even in the business to business world. And so standards have really gone up, expectations have really gone up. And I think a lot of companies just haven't come to grips with that.
Definitely, I definitely agree. Standards have definitely gone up. People expect to be treated good when they're buying from you, basically.
Yeah.
It wasn't like before where take it or leave it.
Exactly. Before, we didn't have nearly as much access to information and access to competition as we do now. Now, if you're really messing up a customer, they'll find out, and they can share that news with everybody else.
Yeah, and with social media, it's going to happen very fast.
Yeah, for sure.
And so Tema, what can businesses do to improve customer experience?
Well, you know, in the book, I talk about the 3 Ps of profit, being promise, people, and process, and they all interact, and you need to get them all right to really up your game in customer experience and to profit from it. So the promise is basically, why are you doing what you're doing? And how are you different from everybody else? And what about it would inspire people to want to work from you and to want to buy from you? So that's the first part. When it comes to the people part, they're internal people, which is your employees. You've obviously got to treat them right, as you said in that quote. But also there's the whole range of external people, which isn't just customers and prospects, but also others who influence them, like family members and the media and social media. And also your relationships with people like your vendors and your distributors. Because if you're not on good terms with them, and let's say your vendor has a shortage of, or your supplier has a shortage of supply, who are they going to give it to? Not you, if they don't like you, if you don't have a good relationship going. So all those human relationships are key, ultimately, to developing great customer service. And then the third bit is the processes. And that's where I find a lot of businesses mess up, is the processes that get you started don't continue to work as your organization grows. You need to reassess and reevaluate regularly.
Because no company is perfect, right?
Of course not. Nobody is.
Definitely. So what's the number one mistake companies make when it comes to customer experience?
I would say the number one mistake is simply not listening. They think they understand their customers, and they haven't actually spent the time to really get to know them and to do it on an ongoing basis. So even though your first few customers might have been really happy with you, over time, the marketplace changes. And most customers aren't going to come and tell you that they're no longer happy. They'll just stop dealing with you. So I think a lot of companies aren't looking for the right signals. And then even when a customer says something, they often ignore it.
And now, Tema, we're living in the digital age. What are the 3 essential ingredients to profitability in the digital era?
Well, I've basically pretty much covered that already. Those were what I called the 3 Ps of profit. So promise, people, and process.
And what's the return of investment in customer experience improvement?
Okay, so there was a study that was done that found that if in the year 2000, you had invested $100 in the overall US stock market, so the Standard & Poor's 500, by 2012, you would be down $93, or a loss of 7%. But if you had invested that same $100 in a fund made up of companies that did well on the American Customer Satisfaction Index, your $100 would have turned into $490. So an increase of 390%. And there's been study after study that has shown that type of result. It is huge. And yet it's frustrating because a lot of companies just aren't doing it.
But that means that if a lot of companies are not doing it, that means there's less competition, which is also a good thing, right?
Yeah, for sure. If you step up your customer service game, you can beat your competition. No problem. They're leaving the door wide open for you.
And Tema, apart from employees and customers, what other types of people matter to a business's success?
Well, again, I guess I jumped ahead of our list there because I already did talk about people like suppliers and distributors, and even your lenders make a difference, because you've got to be on good terms with them so they'll continue to trust you and extend you the credit you need.
Sometimes it's good to be repetitive because
yeah,
people remember it more.
Sure.
And so Tema, okay, the next question I have for you is, what are the early warning signs that we might have a customer experience problem brewing?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, Jamil. And there are some really obvious ones, like sales are declining. That's a pretty good sign there's a problem, and usually it is related to customer experience. But there are also a lot more subtle ones that can help you realize that things are starting to go off the rails, that if they haven't already hit customer experience, they're going to soon. So, for example, if you are finding that you're getting more returns or requests for refunds, and again, that's still relatively obvious, but even if you're going a little step further, if you're finding that things like in your operations, if you manufacture something and production's often delayed because equipment needs repairs or they're missing parts or the rate of product defects is increasing, those things are sort of leading indicators of what will become a customer experience problem. Because if that's happening, you're going to have delays in getting stuff out to your customers, the quality's gone down, all of those things will start making your customers unhappy. Another example would be, your human resources. If you're finding it harder and harder to recruit and retain good people, chances are you've got an employment problem, an employee morale problem that is also going to hurt customer experience. And the other one is in the leadership of your organization. If you've got an executive team and sort of either extreme, either there's no disagreement in the executive suite or there's a ton of disagreement, either of those are indicative of a problem. Because if there's no disagreement, it means that the other folks on your management team are afraid to tell you the truth. And so you've become isolated, and you will be isolated as well from what customers are really experiencing, and you won't know when there's a problem and things can spiral out of control. If there's no disagreement, then that means they're afraid to tell you. If there's a lot of disagreement, then obviously there's some pretty major dysfunction going on in terms of where your company is headed and how it's being run.
And if some customers aren't happy, they might go on social media.
Absolutely. Yep. A classic example is, and this is just so ridiculous, I'm in the middle of writing a LinkedIn piece about it, but there was a company here in Edmonton that a week or two ago decided it was going to sue a potential customer who left a 1-star review on Google. And the 1-star review was because, and he said this clearly in the review, they'd said they would call me back at a certain time and they never called me back. Pretty straightforward. He wasn't even saying that their service was bad. He was just saying they didn't live up to their promise. And they threatened to sue him for that 1-star review. Well, within a few days, because of the outrage over that, their company had to close. They were done.
Wow. That's a very, I won't say scary, but it's
Well, what it means is if you're getting bad reviews, first of all, pay attention to the reviews you're getting and respond to them, the negative ones as well as the positive ones. Show them that you're listening, show them that you care, and that you really want to take advantage of what they're telling you to improve things. And most people will be very receptive to that.
Yes.
And it'll help you figure out how you can be better.
And Tema, there was a quote that the customer is always right, but I don't agree with that quote. The customer is not always right. What do we do if people say negative things about us on social media and it's not true?
Well, okay, so it's true that you're quite right that the customer is not always right. Unfortunately, you kind of have to start with the default assumption that they probably are, but even if they're not, that is their perception. And so you have to deal with the perception. So if somebody is blasting you on social media, let's say, you need to be out there and responding very quickly and politely saying, we're really sorry that this happened to you, or that this appears to have happened. No, not appears, because that would make it seem like you don't believe them. We're really sorry that you feel this way. Can we talk about this offline and see if there's a way we can make things right for you? So there you're acknowledging it. So anybody who sees their post sees that you are taking it seriously and you're acknowledging it. But you're also saying, let's get this thing offline, and encouraging them to go offline so that you don't end up having an argument in public. If you say that and they continue to just want to blast you in public, after a couple of responses, again, just stay calm, stay polite. And if they are still complaining after 2 responses, you can ignore them. And everyone online will see that they're just being a jerk, and it won't be a problem for you.
Definitely. How can we win back customers who've left us because our service wasn't great? Not the jerk, but the
real one.
They had a justified reason.
Absolutely. So the big thing then is to reach out to those customers. So if you have any kind of records that let you see who bought from you in the past and is no longer buying from you, you want to reach out to those people and say, things have changed, or say, we're looking to change and improve. And we know that you had bought from us in the past, and we really value that, and we value your opinions. What can we do to make things work better and make you consider coming back as a customer? So again, it comes down to reaching out and then listening to what people tell you. Because if somebody bought from you once, you were offering something they valued. And so they want you to succeed. Most unhappy customers or customers who left you because they weren't happy, generally speaking, they're willing to give you another try if you make it clear that you're sincere.
I haven't seen companies do that. Like if a customer leaves them, I haven't seen it. Companies reaching out to them to try to get them to come back.
Well, there's a great example of that. There's actually a great example of that on the Frank Reactions podcast. If you go to frankreactions.com, and I don't remember the episode number, but just do a search for Bentley leather. And it was an interesting story. So this guy took over handling their e-commerce just before the busy Christmas season and discovered that they had an awful lot of former customers who had been very angry. And he literally reached out to all of them and said, look, I'm new in this job and I know in the past we didn't treat you right. I want to try and fix things. Will you help me? And it was huge. And it really helped turn things around for them.
It's a very smart idea.
Mm-hmm.
And then Tema, how do I convince the people, or how do people convince the people they work with that things need to change to serve customers better?
Well, that is a big and complicated question. There are a few things that you need to do. In an ideal scenario, it starts with your CEO. And the best way really to get CEOs to understand what's going on is with what we call the voice of the customer. So whether it's actual voice recordings of customer complaints, people who called in complaining, or whether it is copies of emails from people who were complaining or contact forms they filled in, or even if you've hired a research company to just go out there and interview unhappy customers, you'll get actual quotes from real customers. You put that information in front of your CEO, you'd be amazed at how quickly attitudes change and how quickly the company will start refocusing. So that is a really important first step if you can possibly do it. You really can't get buy-in from the top. You can at least chip away at the edges. So within your organization, look for like-minded people who care about the customer and gather them together. And then look for low-hanging fruit. What's one little process we could fix that would make things better for customers? You work and get that process fixed, and then you can start showing some success as a result of that. The more you start showing these little successes, the more you'll find that others in the organization will start to say, maybe you can do something like that over here. And it can snowball that way.
And Tema, can all this be found in your book, People Shock?
Absolutely.
Customers will.
Yeah, and you can find People Shock on Amazon and at various other online booksellers.
When did you author this book?
The book came out a year ago, actually, in the fall of 2016.
That's very recent. Well, 1 year. Yeah, 1 year is very
recent. Yeah.
It's not old school customer service. It's up-to-date customer service information.
Absolutely. And with each chapter, I give action steps and tips about how you can implement some of it. And I've also begun working on a series of workbooks that will also hopefully help, especially businesses that are too small to afford hiring big shot consultants to help. I want to give them some guidance that will help them improve.
And when do you think that will be ready?
Ooh, I hate to predict, but that's probably going to be another several months in the works. But if people want to find out more, they can go to frankreactions.com and just sign up for the Frank Ideas newsletter, and then they'll be sure that they'll hear about it when that happens.
And Tema, before we go, I've got a few more questions for you.
Yeah.
How can I inspire staff with a mission when the work we do isn't earth-shattering? Isn't going to solve world hunger, is it?
No, not everything does. And I think what really struck me the most was when I interviewed a woman who runs a company called Jancoa Janitorial Services. And as she said to me, nobody grows up wanting to be a janitor. And it's a fairly long story, and I go through it a fair bit in the book. But basically, what this company realized was that their staff had really sad kind of lives. They were typically quite poor. They were living in rough neighborhoods, and they didn't have reasons for hope or for dreams. And so the company decided that their mission was going to be to help their employees have dreams and achieve their dreams, whether that dream was buying a car or moving to a home in a better neighborhood. Whatever that dream was, they wanted to help them get there. And they actually hired what they call the dream manager to work one-on-one with each employee to help them achieve their dreams. And, the irony with this is in janitorial services, it's an industry where there's a very high turnover, and it's not, work most people like doing. But what they found is when they shifted this and made their mission all about helping employees and helping them achieve their dreams, the employees started serving customers way better because they cared. Now they felt, wow, this company really cares about us. This is an important mission, and we want to do our company proud. We want to make sure that we reflect the high quality that we see in our leadership. So even if it means you've got to look internally sometimes, there are ways to find an inspirational mission.
Yeah, the people that care are the ones that perform better. Wow.
Right. So give them a reason to care.
Yeah. And Tema, what is design thinking, and how could it help our businesses?
So there's a term that you may have heard called design thinking, which has been bandied around a lot lately. And basically the short explanation is design thinking is about designing your products or your services around well-researched people's needs rather than the other way around. So it starts with really intense customer or prospect research, getting to know what are the things that frustrate people that we want to serve. And then based on what they're telling you, starting to design solutions that will help solve those specific problems, and constantly connecting with those customers as you're developing whatever you're developing to make sure you've really caught it and that you're refining it and that you are in fact designing the ultimate thing that will be ideal for them. So really, it's kind of what we should all be doing when we're starting businesses or introducing new products. But often what happens, especially with entrepreneurs, is we come up with this brilliant idea and then think everyone else will think it's a brilliant idea. And often we don't do that customer research and design until it's too late.
Yeah, I was going to say, before you said that, it's giving people what they want instead of coming up with this brilliant idea, making a product, and then nobody buys it.
Exactly. And, that's a mistake that a lot of us have made.
Design thinking stops that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That's great, Tema. Tema, we ask our customers to fill out surveys, but they almost never do. How can we get more customer feedback?
Well, it's tough, the survey thing, because we're all now so inundated with feedback surveys that a lot of people have become pretty jaded and don't want to spend their time on them. And so there are a couple of things. First of all, for those who do answer your surveys, be absolutely certain that you reach out to each of them, that you thank them for having taken that time. And if they were unhappy about something or have made a suggestion, tell them how you're going to go about implementing it, or if you really can't implement it, tell them what some of the factors are and ask if they have any other thoughts on another way to achieve that same goal. So get their feedback that way. If you're showing that you're actually responsive to those stupid survey forms, more people will take the time. Beyond that, though, don't rely just on surveys. Go out and talk to your customers. Every company owner or CEO, part of their job should be every week going out and meeting and talking with at least one or two customers to find out what's going on in their lives. How's the market changing for them? And to start developing deeper understanding of their issues so that you can make sure that you are really serving them in the best way possible.
Tema, I want to thank you so much for taking your time out to do this interview. You gave us a lot of value. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And I want to thank all the listeners for tuning in. And Tema, before we go, where can you be contacted?
Well, I am on Twitter. It's simply at Tema Frank, so TEMAFRANK. or by email, tema@frankreactions.com, or on LinkedIn. So any of those sort of standard places, it's easy to find me.
And I want to thank all the listeners for tuning in. I'm sure you got much value. If you know anybody that this interview will benefit, please share it with them. Please also leave a comment and subscribe. And I'm Jamil Jama. This is the Law of Business podcast, and that was Tema Frank. Thank you all very much for listening.
Thanks, Jamil.
Thanks for listening to the Laws of Business podcast. Find out more about us on thelawsofbusiness.com. Thank you for being a part of our journey.